Hi guys, this is Frank here, and in this ArmA 3 video, I'm going to show you how you can help optimize your video settings for ArmA 3. Now just keep in mind though, before I continue with this, that this game is very hardware dependent, and it's also it needs more optimization still, but the first thing you should do is look at my About tab on my YouTube channel, and it shows my computer specs, what kind of hardware I'm running, and these are the settings that I use. And typically in a multiplayer session, I have somewhere between at the lowest, I probably have like 30 frames and that's the best low. And then on the highest, it could be over 70 frames. Usually it's averaged out around 50 frames a second. But keep in mind, I have really good hardware, so I'm gonna help you guys understand what to do for your settings. Anyway, just to get this out of the way, I'm gonna show you my settings here. This is the general tab. Just pause the video here. Then this display tab. This doesn't really affect performance, although someone told me that they noticed full screen window helps their performance when they were on a laptop. And AA and PP right here, this is my settings. Now when I'm not recording or streaming, I have over 100 frames in this exact scenario where I am right now in the desert. So keep that in mind. Also, so now the rest of this video is just gonna be me explaining what settings you should set, and also actually before I get on with that, go to your My Documents folder. Go to your ArmA 3 folder, and there is an ArmA3.cfg. Open that with a zip program, or a text program rather. And there is a GPU. These two things here. Let me see if I can make it bigger so it's easier to read. GPU max frames ahead equals 1, and make sure this is what you wanted to set it to, equals 1. So I think you could also set it to 0 or 3, and people have different effects with different results on their performance, but I noticed a tremendous difference. By default, I think this was 1000, and when I set it to 1, I noticed a very huge difference in the smoothness of my frame rate. And also, there's a refresh rate here. I have a 144 Hz monitor with 1 millisecond response time. So by default, I think this is set to 60, but I set it to 144, and that made a big difference also. So anyway, that's that. Just get that out of the way. That should help optimize your game in itself. And then there's the settings. So now this part, sampling, this is basically the resolution of your or the 3D rendering of your screen. You could double your resolution, which will tremendously drop your frame rate, but you'll have a sharper picture. Some people say they don't notice it. That's just because they either have a tiny screen or they're not looking hard enough at how much sharper the image is, because there's usually a huge difference in the way it looks. Also for texture, this is GPU dependent mainly. If you set that's another thing. A lot of these settings, if you set them on low, even though it's something that the GPU should be processing, instead your CPU will process it instead, which is bad, because if there's any instance where your GPU can process something, you want it to process it. Your CPU should you should try to get your CPU to work on AI, terrain, and shit like that is mandatory for the CPU. You don't need to bog more shit onto it. So anyway, so for texture, the lowest you want to set it to is high, in my opinion. If you set it to standard or low, your CPU is going to be using that. For objects, the lower you set this, the better it is. You can set it to standard, but anything lower than standard is going to look terrible, so I would recommend you keep objects on high or standard. You can put it on ultra also. Sometimes I play with ultra. It just depends on the map you're in. Terrain is completely CPU dependent. If you set this on ultra, you're gonna just lag more, period, and there's not really that big of a difference in the terrain. So keeping it on standard is the best, because you still have grass, and that's about it. If you set it on low, then there is no grass, and it makes the maps look like shit, and it makes the mountains way more jaggier as well. Then there's shadows. This is something you want the GPU to handle, so you want to keep shadows somewhere between high and ultra usually, or you could disable them, but ultra is nice. Depends on your graphics card, of course. Some people, if you have a motherboard dependent graphics card, then that's bad. You need to just get a new video card. That way ArmA will run better, so it can focus. Your GPU can take off a lot of the load from your motherboard and CPU. And there's particles. Just always keep this on high. Even though you'll notice better frames with low, you don't want an instance where tracers aren't being shown in intense firefights, or muzzle flashes, or stuff like that, or dust kicking up from gunshots that are far away. just for a couple more frames. You won't even notice a difference in the frame rate unless you're using Blast Core. Then there's no reason to not have this on particles on high. Then there's cloud. There is no difference in performance that I've noticed. Maybe one frame if you set this on like low, but cloud on ultra is fine. PIP, I always disable this if I'm not using it. I'm actually going to disable it now. Only time you want to keep PIP enabled is if you're using like a RHS scope that has picture-in-picture, or if you're using a vehicle that has picture-in-picture that you want to use it for, like the mirrors or whatever. But I typically keep it disabled. You will notice a big frame boost turning off PIP in vehicles at least. HDR, just keep that on standard. Turning on low will give you much better frame rate, but it just looks way worse. So just keep it on standard. And I think the game actually runs better on standard, generally, in many situations. Then there's dynamic lights. I just keep this on ultra, but you could set it to high at the lowest. If you set it to lower than high, then it's just not going to look good. Alright, next is for overall view distance. There's no reason to really set your view distance higher than 2000. If you're a pilot, then that's different. If you're a pilot, then you want to set this to like 6000 or whatever. But this video is going to be about saving frames. So keeping everything at 2000 or lower, like the lowest you might want to set this to that's actually going to be playable is maybe like 1500. If you set it lower than that, then you're not really going to be able to see context far away. So, or, you get the point. Anyway, just keep this at fucking 2000 and this also at 2000. And the way to set these both to the same values, you basically, if I just do this, go to 2000, you see that it changes the value of this. And if you try to set this to 2000, sometimes it doesn't do it. So, but if you do have a hard time doing that, you just highlight this, copy and paste, and simple as that. Shadow, I just set this to 200. That means that shadows should come in within 200 meters of your character. That's when they should be starting the render. But if you want to save frames, you want to keep this at 100 or lower. If you're playing in a jungle map, or a forest, really dense forest map, you might even want to set this even lower, because when it's drawing tons of like little shadows through trees, through the leaves and all that, that actually hits the performance even harder than usual, especially more than a urban environment. So keep that in mind. But I keep it at 200. Like I said, none of this really matters for performance for the display tab, and then for the AA and PP tab, you have all these post-processing effects or whatever. I just keep them all disabled because I heard that they improve performance, and I have noticed better performance since then, so there you go. Sharpen filter makes the game look nicer, but it hits performance a little harder than I'd like, so I keep the sharpen filter off. AO is, what is this? Ambient occlusion. This basically makes, I'm not going to explain what these do, I'm just going to say performance. For performance, keeping it disabled does slightly increase performance, but the fact that it brings out characters better and objects better because of the little shadows around edges makes it look better, and it also makes it easier to make targets pop out in the background and the backdrops and stuff like that. So it's very nice to have. Caustics, I haven't even noticed this at all in any situation, so I just disable it. I don't know if there's a performance increase, but I just keep it disabled. There's FSAA. Disabling it will increase your frames tremendously, but it makes the game look a lot boxier. You can't really tell here, but if there's like HESCO barriers in front or barbed wire, that's when you will notice a big difference. Just an example. Then there's ATOC, which is usually people have all trees and all grass, but what the problem is, if you have all trees and all grass, when you use your scope, like a magnified optic, and there's grass within the screen space, you will notice a frame drop. So I just have all trees. You'll notice even better performance if you just set it to disabled, but the game really looks shitty without the all trees enabled. So just keep it on all trees. PPAA, this is more preference based. As far as performance, I haven't really noticed the difference. Maybe it's just because of my hardware, but I can't really say for sure. So I just keep it on CMAA. But if you keep it on disabled, I'm sure that increases performance also. Let's actually try. I actually increased by like 4 frames or 5 frames. Anisotropic filtering, this is basically makes tilt textures look better. So if I disable this, see it looks blurry around here, especially when it gets further away. But if I set it to ultra, it looks way better. So I don't notice at all much of a difference when I disable this. Yeah, no difference at all. So just keep it on ultra. Anyway, I think that is it. There's other ways to increase your performance. For example, if I go in the ArmA 3 launcher, which is not open. I don't even know how to open the fucking launcher for this game. Anyway, there's a thing in the launcher. You know, let me get out of this goddamn game. I'm going to show you how to increase your frames a little bit more. I'm going to launch ArmA again. And then in the launcher, when you try to launch the game, go to parameters. And you go to, well, these things are, you want to keep this on. No splash and skip intro, you always want to keep that on. Go to advanced. In the advanced tab, there's an advanced drop down thingy here. Just scroll down and make sure no logs and world empty is selected. This will make your game load up faster, and also no logs will, in some situations, this could tremendously increase your performance. Now, there's other things too you could do, like increase the maximum video RAM the game uses and shit like that. But I use these, and it made my loading times in the game like 5 times longer. So this did not, none of this shit that they added improved my performance. In fact, it only hit my performance way harder and made my loading much more intense. So I don't know if it has to do with my hardware or if it's just like it's not finished being implemented, but that's that. Anyway, hopefully this video was slightly more informative than my other ones, and if you guys want me to go more into detail about how to optimize the game a little bit better, let me know. Anyway, take it easy.